So my name is Clif. I know some people here today, some people I don't. I am a vegan animal rights activist. Some of you will probably have seen me on social media. I go into the streets of Belfast and I open conversations with people and I try to persuade them to go vegan, to live a more peaceful and more compassionate lifestyle. Not only do I do that, in the past I was an AV, Anonymous Voiceless organiser. I work with animal aid, so I go into schools as well and I talk to school children about this very important subject. And I've kind of dedicated my life to trying to help animals. So my journey, I'll just tell you quickly about my journey to being vegan. When I was a child, I loved animals. Dearly loved animals. I just wanted to be around them and to cuddle them and to see them. But I was duped by society like everybody else. I was led to believe. So I'm trying to think. I was born in 1968. No internet in those days. The only information that I could avail of was from my parents, from my peers and from school teachers. And I was taught like everybody else. You go to school and they teach you have to drink milk for calcium, you have to eat meat for protein, we have to use animal skin to make football boots and sports equipment and jackets and all this stuff. So just completely normalized to me. So I was never overly comfortable with it, even as a small child. So even though I surrounded myself with animals and the books I read were about animals, the TV programs and the cartoons I watched were about animals, I was duped by society to pay and support things that I myself would never ever do. So I remember, I'm just trying to think, I gave up drinking milk when I was 5 years old. I just thought it was disgusting. When I was 6, I saw my granddad, who would have done some casual angling or fishing, gutting a fish in his kitchen on a Sunday afternoon, and I was like, no, I'm not eating that anymore, so I stopped eating fish. At 7, I told my mum that pink meat, because we used to eat like pork sausages and gammon steak and pork fillet in my house. They were kind of like a staple. I was like, see that pink meat? I didn't even know what it was at 7 years old. I'm not eating that anymore, so I stopped eating pork at 7. And when I was 10, I had an experience that stayed with me for my entire life and still sits with me today. So my friend and I were kicking a football outside my house, like we did every day. I was obsessed by football when I was young. And my house was about, if you're driving to the, as we called it in those days, the abattoir, it's a slaughterhouse, was about 2 miles, but it was actually across about 2 fields. And this day we were kicking a football, and out of the corner of my eye I saw a cow, a brown and white cow running across the field. Caught my eye. And behind the cow came 2 guys dressed top to toe in white. They had like green Wellington boots on. They were covered in blood splatters. Both of them were carrying hefty sticks. So they chased the cow into the corner of the field and they began to beat the cow across the back, across the legs, across the face, until the cow fell to the ground and was off its feet. So at 10 years old, I was completely shocked. And for the first few seconds, I didn't say anything. I just stood there with my mouth open. And then almost involuntarily, I began to shout, "Hey, stop! What are you doing?" And my friend started to shout, and my dad came out of the house and he started to shout too. Now, my dad wasn't vegan, but I get my love of animals from my dad. And if he was alive today, I'm 100% sure that he would be vegan too. And then a van turned up and drove across the field, and 2 more guys got out and they tied ropes around the legs of the cow and they drove off, dragging the cow behind them. And I was like, what the hell have I just witnessed? And so my dad explained to me afterwards that the cow had obviously escaped from the abattoir, that he or she had ran for their lives, and those guys had come to take her back or take him back. And I was really shocked by it. You can probably hear my voice talking about these things still upsets me to this day. So I stopped eating red meat somewhere around 10 years old. But all through my teenage years, even though I was a animal lover. I was still wearing leather. I was drinking milk, I was eating eggs, and I was still eating chicken because I thought I had to. Like, it was the 1970s. Like, where the heck would I get information from in the 1970s when nobody's coming to you with the information? So the only information I can remember is a lady coming to Ballymena like once or twice a year, and she'd sit out in the middle of town on a little tiny table about half the size of this one, and she had like anti-vivisection stuff on the table. I always had a petition, and I used to buy a badge or get a leaflet from her and sign the petition. That's the only information that I had. So I continued to do that right up until I was 20 years old. And then I got more information and I realized, holy shit, I don't need to eat these products at all. So I went vegetarian, strict vegetarian. And I lived a lot of my adult life as a strict vegetarian, but I was still wearing leather, justifying it to myself that it's a byproduct, wearing leather shoes and jackets, trying to look cool, and using products that were tested on animals, because I didn't have the first clue about what shampoo was tested on animals and what wasn't. I don't even think in the 70s there was like the bunny symbol or anything on any products. Like, how the heck would you know? So I went vegetarian, and it wasn't until, I'm going to say about 10 or 12 years ago now, I was in work one day, okay, and it was winter time, and we weren't busy, and I put the internet on, I was watching YouTube, and I was watching a durian rider video. Has anybody heard of durian rider and Freddie way back in the day? So I was watching a durian rider video, this crazy guy eating 30 bananas a day, and he mentioned in his video about a speech, and it was a speech by a guy called Gary Yourofsky. And I thought, oh, right, okay, I'll click on this. And I expected to flick through it in a few minutes. It's about an hour long. Well, I was hooked in the first 5 minutes because this guy was just dropping nukes about what happens to animals. And I listened to the whole speech, and that affected me deeply. And I couldn't argue with one single word that guy said in that speech. And I decided to go fully vegan overnight. And I went home that day and threw everything out of my wardrobe, all my shoes, all the cosmetics. Well, when I say cosmetics, obviously I don't wear makeup, but all my hair products and anything that was connected to suffering of animals was gone. So shortly after that, I decided to become an activist because I realized that, okay, I'm vegan now, but if I sit at home and do nothing, well, then nothing's going to change. And I firmly believe that the ripple effect is a thing. So if I talk to one person, okay, I might not have a big effect. Let me put it this way. I could talk to 100 people and maybe one person goes vegan, right? I could talk to one person who goes vegan who could turn into the next Gary Yourofsky or the next Joey Carbstrong, somebody, or Earthling Ed as well. You know, somebody who has a massive effect. That's how the ripple effect works. So maybe my influence is not that great, but I could influence one person who has a massive effect on others. So that's why I want to be an activist and go out and speak for the animals. And if you think about how many vegans there are in the world, right? What are we, like 2% of the world's population, if that? And then you divide that by the number of people who are actually active and out there speaking for animals. How many are there? Like, it may seem, I don't know if you watch YouTube videos of Joey Carbstrong or whatever, that all this activism's taking place, but there are so few activists in the world's population, and we really need people to be activists and to speak for the animals, because the animals, yes, they have a voice, but people choose not to listen to them. They're silenced, and they're in places where they cannot speak for themselves. So who else is going to speak for them? Vegetarians are not going to speak for them. So vegans must go out and speak for animals and speak clearly and passionately for animals. And you may think that being an activist is extreme, right? People have this image of activism that you have to put underwear on or a bikini on and cover yourself blood and run down the street shouting, "You're a murderer," at people. You know, you can do that if you want, if that's what works for you. And to be honest, if you want to do it, give me a call, because I will join you and do it with you. But my way of doing activism is to talk to people, and talk to people in a manner where They understand the message, they don't feel judged, and they feel it not so much here, but they feel it in here. And they understand that they are supporting something that is very, very, very wrong. So I want to ask you, if you shout out, if you're thinking about the public perception of vegans or the media perception of vegans, give me some words that people associate with vegans and vegan activists. Anybody? And judgmental would be one. Any? Pushy or preachy, yeah, that would be another. Yep. Angry, yes. Any more? Extreme. So those are all negative words. Like, veganism needs a new PR man, because the public perception of vegans and vegan activists is really poor. The way I look at it is, so say the vegan festival today was having an after party tonight, and we were all going to go to the party, right? And there's 2 rooms at the after party. And in one room are vegans, or one room are just people, any people, who are preachy and angry and pushy and judgmental. And in another room are people who are kind and compassionate and will take time to talk to you, and they're loving. Which room are you going to go to? Which room are you going to join in that party? Yeah, you're not going to go to the one full of assholes. You're going to go to the one with all the nice, cool people. So, yes, we need to hold people accountable for their actions, but we need to do it in the right manner. So, I've been doing activism. How long have I been doing activism? Just 7, 8 years, maybe more. And I was that angry vegan too. And it's very easy to be frustrated when you're angry, because when I first went vegan, I felt like I had stumbled upon this massive secret. And I kind of had in some ways. And I was like, I'm just going to go and tell all my friends about this. And they're going to watch Earthlings too. And they're going to go vegan as well. And there's a massive sense of disappointment that when you speak to people at first and they don't get it, you're just like, what the hell? I'm on my own here. And I sat at home, I was angry, frustrated, I got complacent. And to be honest now, those are negative feelings, right? All that stuff is not just bad for the other person who you're talking to, it's bad for you to hold that stuff inside you as well. So now I'm full of hope. And it's genuine hope, and it's based in reality. And there's numerous reasons for that hope. Number one, when I was a strict vegetarian all those years and wanted alternative products, all I could go to was a little health food store in Ballymena, and they had a bag of like dried soy mince in a paper bag. I don't know if any of you remember that stuff. Holy shit, it was horrendous. It was so bad. And the only thing you could make with it was spaghetti bolognese or lasagna or maybe chili non carne. Like, it was really, really terrible. So nowadays, just look upstairs. There's so much food. Like, vegan food is unbelievable. I would argue my diet is more varied and better now than it has ever been. And like, we can eat everything now. Like vegan ice cream, for God's sakes, vegan pizzas, vegan chocolate, vegan everything. Those things, like, 20, 30 years ago, if somebody had said there's vegan ice cream, I would have went, holy shit, where do I get on a plane to go and try and find this stuff? Now I can walk into Tesco's and just pick it up, you know. So there's that. There's also lab-grown meat now. Not for me, and I don't really support it, but it's coming, and I actually genuinely think it's going to come on really, really strong. So, like I say, I won't be eating it, and it's not something I support, but we have to accept that it will bring about the end to an almighty amount of suffering for other animals. So I believe that is going to be a thing, because the way we do farming now is just not sustainable. The planet is getting trashed. Human health is suffering really, really badly. And of course, the plight of the animals as well. So that's number two. Number three are the activists I see around me, people who I look up to. I mentioned some before, so Joey Carbstrong. Some of you might know some of these. If you don't, I recommend you follow them. It's Melon Steve, it's Dinesh. Chris Hines is another one, David Rams, Earthling Ed. all these people I look up to who are out there all the time trying to make a real difference. And the other reason I'm hopeful is history. Because if I look at injustices of the past, if I look at women's rights, or I look at slavery in the past, those were things, there's a moral progress in society for the most part. And when enough people stand up and say, that's wrong, and something has to change, well then things do change. That's how societies work. So I look at history and I look at the past and I know that things for the most part always get better. So I am hopeful of change coming. So yeah, that's why I do activism, because I'm hopeful of change and I'm trying to create that ripple effect or that exponential change among people, that one person tells another person, and that's how change happens. Change won't come from the top. It won't come from government. It's not going to come from massive corporations. It will come from the people. So I want to give you some advice that I've learned over the years. You can take it or leave it. It may not be for you. So the first one is education or knowledge. Knowledge is power, right? So I recommend that you educate yourself in the answers. When you're speaking to people about veganism, the same things come up over and over and over again. There's probably about 50 things that people will say. From protein, from plants feel pain, what about crop deaths? All these things come up over and over again. So the first thing I'd recommend you do is watch other activists like the ones I named and see how they handle the conversations and see how they give the answers, because that's how I learned that. Like, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants who went before me and showed me how to do it. And the best resource, I would say, is Earthling Ed's. It's an ebook, or you can watch it on YouTube in little snippets, about 3 or 4 minutes long. It's called 30 Days, 30 Excuses. So Ed covers when somebody says, what about protein? What about crop deaths? He gives you the answer in like a little 2 or 3 minute snippet. Once you read that and you remember it, the next time somebody is on the street talking to you. And we have to remember, when you're talking to people on the street, or family, or friends, or people at work, when somebody says to you, where do you get your protein from? Your reaction should never be, Jesus, that's the 50th time I've heard that this week. You have to answer those questions like it's the first time you've ever heard it, because for those people, most people are not educated in this subject at all. And everything they say to you, number one, there's a nugget of truth in what they're saying to you. And number two, I see it like an assault course. So people have this assault course between where they are and going vegan. So everything they say to you is like a little barrier or a wall or a rope climb. And you have to get them over each one. And when you answer one, they'll probably run to the next one. And when you answer that one, they'll probably run to the next, until they get to the point where they have nothing left. They have no more defenses. So when you're speaking to them, like, it's virtually impossible to do that in one conversation. But you should at least get them over 1 or 2 hurdles. So that the next time they have a conversation with you or another vegan or an activist on the street, they get some more pointers in the right direction. So always remember to try and answer everybody's question like it's the first time you've ever heard it. And the most important one would be to be non-judgmental. I remember years ago, I picked this up. It was a body language program on TV. When you judge somebody, when you point your finger at somebody, what do? They put their defenses up, they put a shield up. Pointing your finger at somebody is like a spear. You're attacking somebody. If somebody puts their defenses up, the conversation is pretty much gone. You'll not recover from it because they're just in a defensive mode and they're not going to listen to anything you say. So you cannot be judgmental. And I don't know, some of you probably have seen my conversations online, and one of the first things I always say to people is, I am not judging you. And I'm genuinely not judging them because I just have to look at myself. I, for 30 or 40 years of my life, was funding these things, even though I was an animal lover. So who the hell would I be to judge anybody? So I have to allow people the space and the opportunity to listen to what I am saying without judgment. I want them to come towards me. I don't want to push them away. And yeah, if you judge people, it just does not work. So try and not judge people, even though you get frustrated and you get angry and you're like, oh, come on. Sometimes I just want to shake people, but you cannot show that energy to people at all. I was going to say appeal to people's hearts. That's what I try and do. You can try and talk as logically and as philosophically as you want to people, but try and talk to people's hearts. I drag on experiences. I have been to slaughterhouses and done save vigils, and I have heard the screams of the animals. I've been on farms. I've done loads of stuff, and it affects me deeply. And oftentimes when I'm talking to people, I will get emotional about what I've seen and heard. Like we used to do vigils. Jason has been there sometimes. Cranswick and Carroll Foods in Cookstown. So Cranswick is in Ballymena, for those of you who don't know. Have you all heard of Galgorm Resort and Spa? Yeah? You all know that? So 500 yards away, like literally a stone's throw right next door, is a gas chamber for pigs where they gas 3,000 pigs every single day. Absolutely shocking. So I've stood there and watched those pigs arrive and seen the terror. And I've listened to their screams as they are gassed, and it is absolutely horrendous. So I've often said to people, if I could bottle up the emotion that I feel when I've been there and seen and listened to that happening, and I could give that to people, what a powerful tool that would be. Because I don't believe that anybody could stand there unless you are a freaking psychopath and listening to the suffering of those animals. How could you stand there and go, oh, I'm begging? You know, so try and talk to people's hearts, because most people, I believe, are good people. There are psychopaths in the world, and there are bad people in the world, but most people are good people. That's why people buy free range, and they buy RSPCA approved, and they buy Red Tractor approved, because they think they've been told they're doing a good thing for animals, right? The RSPCA, they're an animal organisation. They've approved these eggs, so the animals must be having a great life. So people have a good heart. Most people care about animals in some way, so try and appeal to their heart. And okay, you need to be logical as well, and you need to know what you're talking about. You can't, like, so when I first went vegan, I was in work, I'm going to tell you a story, and a guy said to me, what if we don't eat all animals? They're going to take over the world. And I remember thinking, Jesus, I don't think chickens are going to take over the world, mate. But I didn't have the answer for that question at that time. The answer is, well, we don't breed them into existence in the first place. And I remember going home that night and looking up what's the best answer for this question, and I found it. But by that point, the conversation had gone and I'd missed out. So if you're knowledgeable and you talk to people in a compassionate and non-judgmental way, it actually genuinely does work. And I get messages. I talk to people. I'm on the streets of Belfast 3 or 4 times a week, and every week I am getting messages from people I've spoken to who are now vegan. So I know for me that it does work. So it works for me, it can work for anybody. And the last advice for, I don't know, let me see how long I've been yakking on here for 1 second. I was going to say plant seeds. That's your mission when you talk to people, right? So I used to get frustrated. I'd talk to people about what's happening to animals and you should be vegan, and I'd get frustrated because they wouldn't go vegan on the spot. That is not going to happen. It's happened once or twice with me in 7 or 8 years. I'm just checking how much time I've been talking for here. Oh, I'm good. Your mission is not to make somebody go vegan on the spot. If that happens, fantastic. And it does rarely happen. But if you think that way and you go home thinking, shit, could I have said something better? Or what should I have said to make that person go vegan on the spot? You'll just drive yourself crazy and it'll burn you out. So, first of all, number 1, show up and do the best that you can. You don't always have to be perfect when you're having a conversation, and plant seeds with people. And I look at it on a scale of 1 to 10 when you're talking with somebody. So somebody who's at 1, right, might be a dairy farmer That's a fire alarm. Maybe that's have to go off. I'll just give it 2 minutes. There we go. That's all the farmers that hate me out there. Yeah, plant seeds with people. So somebody might be they might be a dairy farmer, they've been indoctrinated into their whole life, they don't really care about animals. Well, they do to the extent that they make money from them. Somebody who's a 4 or a 5 may have a dog or a cat at home that they love dearly. Somebody who's a 6 or a 7 may be a vegetarian like I was for many years. And 10 is the goal. 10 is being vegan. So when you're talking to that person, I want you to think of it as giving them 2 or 3 extra points.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. May I have your attention, please? This is to announce that there is
Everybody out. Yeah, so your mission is to give people 2 or 3 points. If they're at 1, get them to 3. If they're at 3, get them to 5. If they're at 5, give them 2 or 3 points, get them to 7 or 8. And if you bump into somebody like me or like many of you here today who loved animals, and people say, well, you don't need to love animals to be vegan, and you don't, because it is a justice issue. You don't need to love animals to realise that enslaving them and taking their lives away from them is wrong. So I know many vegans who would call themselves not animal lovers, and that's fine, but most people who are vegan, I would say, are animal lovers. So if you meet somebody like me in the street, like I wish I had have spoken to somebody like me in the street all those years ago, and somebody would have told me what I know now, because I would have went vegan on the spot. So I'm always looking forward to meet somebody who is almost there, and I'm going to push them that little bit forward. Always see it as planting seeds and not vegan on the spot, although if you can, like I say, do it. How much time have I got? I was going to cover some questions, but I'm going to skip it because maybe you'll ask me some questions at the end. I wanted to say to you, I live in Galgorman, Ballymena, by the way. I live about a mile from Cranswick. So it's just up the road from my house. And they are working 24/7. If you drive past it at night time, there's trucks arriving in the middle of the night. It's just absolutely constant. So I seen a truck on my way here this morning, and it kills me because I know what they're about to go through. And every time I see one, what I actually want to do is pull my car in front of that truck and stop it and release those animals. But that's not logical. I mean, I might do that once, I'll get arrested. Nothing's going to happen. Those pigs are going to be at the side of the road for an hour until my car's towed out of the way, and then they'll go to where they were going anyway. So that's logically not going to work. So the best thing I can do is to go onto the streets and talk to people on an individual level. It may seem crazy to some of you, and I'm not saying that you have to do that. It's not what you have to do. There are many ways of being active. Social media is one. Write poems, write songs, make nice food for people. Jeez, there's so many things you can do. I never thought I would be an activist. Like, I forgot about this. Before Christmas, I was south of Dublin with Jason at 3 o'clock in the morning on the roadside with walkie-talkies, filming farms. I never in a million years thought I would be doing stuff like that. So everybody can do something in some way. Should it be a conversation or social media is another great thing. My conversations, I go out on the street with a GoPro, a little tiny GoPro. It's in my bag, it's in here. A little tiny GoPro and a recording device. And I set it up. And on my social media now, so I see it as if I record a conversation with somebody. So say I speak to you in the street. It's a one-on-one conversation, one person. If I put my conversations on social media, well, maybe dozens or hundreds or thousands of people will see that conversation. I had a video last year that had over 1.5 million views. So that in the past would not be possible, but because of technology, and it's one of the other reasons I'm hopeful now is because of technology. I can go out with a little tiny camera and a recording device. I have a laptop at home, and I can put videos online. And it's so easy these days. When I first started, I had to write because people in Belfast, their accents can be crazy sometimes. Hard for people that are not from here to understand. Some people, not all. I have a piece of software now which is free called CapCut, if anybody's heard of it. I put the video in, I add subtitles, and it automatically subtitles the whole thing for me. All I have to do is pick a font and change the odd word that it picks up wrong. So I've gone from like a 10-minute video on YouTube that had to be subtitled in the past. It would have taken me 4 or 5 hours. Now it takes me 20 minutes. So we have all these technological advances and things that we can take, that we can use to make a real difference. And back to the trucks that I was saying, that truck I saw this morning. So I say to people, those pigs are removed from you, and most people, even though we're vegan, we don't spend our whole lives thinking about it. Here's how I think about it. Has anybody in here got a dog or a cat or a companion animal at home? Yeah. Imagine it was your dogs on that truck. Imagine it was your dogs in that truck, or your cat, or any companion animal. Would you sit at home? And I'm not dogging you out, by the way. I'm just saying this is how I think about it. If it was my dog, I'd get out of my bed and I'd go and do something about it, because I know that he values his life, and his life is important to him. And that's why I do it. I try to make change, and it may only be a small change, but like I said, the ripple effect is real, and it does work. And yeah, just 2 other things I want to tell you. I want to give you an example of how a conversation can work. So last year, this is a true story. You can go and watch the conversation, and I posted the message that the guy sent me on my YouTube and on my social media. So I was in town, and 3 young farmers stood with me. 2 of them stayed to the side. One of them had a proper conversation with me. He was a dairy farmer. And so he started off by saying, "You don't know much about dairy farming. What do you know? You've never been in a farm in your life." And I said, "Well, I will tell you what I know about dairy farming, point by point, and you tell me if it's right or not." So we went through about 10 points about the plight of the male calves and what happens to the females. And he goes, yeah, that's all true. And then he went on to tell me that vegan food was rubbish, and I asked him what vegan food he'd tried, and he hadn't tried any. Which happens a lot, by the way. People will say to you, vegan food's trash, what have you tried? And they'll go, they've never tried any of it. So we had this whole conversation, and he made a couple of things like detached from animals type thing, but I could tell there was a heart in there somewhere. And at the end of the conversation, I talked him into trying a Greg's sausage roll, because if you know Belfast, I usually stand outside Dunn's, and Greg's is just around the corner, because he was telling me vegan food was crap, and I was like, mate, you can go around the corner and buy a sausage roll for £1, and it tastes pretty good. So he actually headed off that way after the conversation, heading towards Greg, and I thought, okay, well, he's going to try it at least. And never heard a word from him. I don't hear from everybody I talk to. I hear from some people. And I thought, well, he's a farmer, he's a dairy farmer. I'm never going to hear from that guy ever again. But at least we had a reasonable conversation, and he's gone away thinking, well, vegans aren't these crazy, angry, extreme people. So 3 Sunday mornings later, he sent me a message by DM on Instagram, and I don't have it with me, but I'll paraphrase what he said. And like I said, you can go and read the full message online. And he said, "Hi Clif, my name's Owen. I'm from Tyrone. I'm the dairy farmer that you spoke to a few weeks ago in Belfast. I was shopping with my friends." He said, "I just want to thank you for having a respectful conversation with me, and for making me think about things that I'd never thought about before, and make it." He said, my eyes were blind to the cruelty that was right in front of him. And he said, thinking about it, I've tried some vegan food now, and it's not so bad after all, and it seems like a small change. I get upset with these things, sorry. It seems like a small change to make, to not support these industries. And he said, I don't own a dairy farm, but I've worked on a dairy farm since I left school. And he said, it may seem like a small change to you, but he said, I have I've given up my job on the dairy farm and I'm starting a new job on an arable farm growing crops. And he said it pays less money, but it sits right with my heart. So if a dairy farmer who has been on a dairy farm from his entire life can change, well then pretty much anybody can change. So you can always reach people, and don't prejudge people as well. You know, I've talked to many people, I thought, that guy's a farmer, he's not going to change, and there you go. He left his job, which is like, most of us make the decision to go vegan, right? How many people make the decision to go vegan and give up their flipping job? Like, that's crazy next level stuff. So all powers to that guy. So yeah, that's it. And I always finish, every time I talk, I don't normally talk about giving advice and stuff. I'm normally talking to people about going vegan. I'm presuming that most people here today are vegan at least, but I always tell a myth. It's quite short, so I'll not keep you. And I heard Sean Munson tell this myth. Sean Munson was the producer or the director of Earthlings, and he was at a vigil, and he told this myth. And I'm not religious in any way whatsoever at all, but he told this myth, and it sat with my heart, and it's something that I love, and I always tell it at the end of every time I talk. And the myth goes that when you die and you go to heaven, there's a bridge that you have to cross. And on that bridge is every animal that you ever intersected with during your life on earth. And those animals will decide on whether or not you cross. And that'll be done. Thank you very much. What's the time, Jason? What's the time? I don't know if anybody wants to ask any questions. I have another mic here if you want. Just, I'll give you a minute. Yeah. Look at this one.
I'm just wondering, how do you approach people? Like you, naturally, I always cared about animals as well from a small age. Particularly as I children care about animals. But when you're talking to people and they don't have that, and they say, well, I don't care because I like eating meat. And they don't have any empathy for animals, and they just think about their own satisfaction what they want. How do you really reach those people if they care about humans, but they don't care about anyone beyond humans? Well, how do you speak to people like that?
I don't. I just give them a vegan. No, I'm joking. Some people are selfish and do not care. So, it's nuanced. There's different levels of it. If I get a sense when I'm having, how long have I got on the streets? 2 or 3 days a week, 2 or 3 hours. It's not really a long time. So if I'm talking to somebody and early on I get a sense that they do not care at all, I'm not going to waste my time on them. That's the truth. I'm not going to waste my time. And I learned it early on at an AV Cube one day, where a chicken farmer turned up, and it was January or February. It was absolutely freezing cold. And he just wanted to argue. Didn't give a shit about animals, just wanted to argue. And I was trying my very best to convince him, and I spoke to him for well over an hour. It might have been an hour and a half. The rest of the people who were doing the AV Cube had gone. They'd all gone to a coffee shop, and I was still standing in Corn Market talking to this guy. Absolutely unbelievable. I wanted to shake the guy then. I was so frustrated at him. So if they genuinely do not care, I think we have to accept that some people don't give a shit. All they care about, they only care about themselves. They don't really care about human beings either. And to get them to care about animals is a whole other level. So those people, I can have 4 or 5 conversations with people who actually do get it, and the time I wasted with that guy for an hour and a half. So I let those people go. And like I say, if they don't love animals, you don't have to love animals, because for me it is a justice issue. So, like, the first person I learned that from was James Aspey when he was over here. He said to me, I don't really love animals. I was like, what the hell are you talking about? You're one of the biggest vegan influencers at the time. And he goes, no, I just realised that it's completely and utterly wrong, that it's an injustice to enslave somebody, to take their life away from them. And that's, so you don't have to love animals to be vegan, absolutely not. And many vegans don't love animals the way that possibly me and you do, and that's fine. As long as they're not doing any harm. So. Anyone have anything?
Good talk. I'd just like you to just talk a bit about going out solo and, in terms of, getting defined, just how you go about doing activism. Like the idea of what
Okay. So, all I use are signs to drag people into a conversation. So I spent many months thinking, when I went out solo activism, how do I don't want to just walk up to random people and start badgering them. I want people to come to me. So my signs, so I am an animal rights activist, and it's not about abuse or suffering for me, it's about use and exploitation. And some vegans are against us using the word abuse because that's like a welfare term when you talk about abuse. Most people don't consider abuse. To most people is kicking a dog or starving your family pet or whatever. But I think what happens in I think we need to reframe this conversation for most people, because what happens in farms and slaughterhouses is like on a whole other level of abuse. It's just been normalised to standardised, industrialised abuse. That's what it is. Throwing an animal into a gas chamber, hang them upside down, cut their throat. It's abusive behaviour. It's abusive behaviour to keep somebody in a cage for their entire life. So, first of all, we need to reframe that conversation. So my signs, I do two things. I have a sign, that's right, reverse psychology. I have a sign that says, it's perfectly okay for humans to abuse animals for pleasure. So everybody wants to tell me, what the hell? How can, they want to come up to me and say, are you serious? And then I reframe it and say, well, actually, dude, I'm an animal rights activist, and you're the one. If you're going to tell me that you want to keep chickens in cages for their short lives and then electrocute them and cut their throats, well, then you're the one that thinks it's okay to abuse animals for pleasure, not me. So reframe it that way. And the other one, I'm going to do it today, actually, after I leave here. It says, what are your thoughts on animal abuse? I should really use the word use, but if I put the word use on a sign, it's not really provocative. Most people are not going to. Most people, when I have that sign, want to come up to me and tell me they're against animal abuse. So I asked them 4 questions that I thought long and hard about. How do I get from A to Z quickly instead of having this whole big long conversation? So 4 questions to get there quickly. The first one is, what are your thoughts on animals? So the person's come up to me to tackle me about that sign and tell me they're against animal abuse. They obviously care about animals. So everybody will say, oh, I love animals. I love my dog. I love dolphins. I love horses, whatever. So my second question is, okay, what do you think of people who abuse animals or animal abuse in general? On a theme, the same answer from everybody. They should be shot. They should be strung up. They should be thrown in prison. They should be killed. They should be hung. Somebody told me they should be castrated one day, which is my favourite. So I tend to agree with those people, to be honest. That's our older thoughts. Animal abuse is absolutely terrible. The third question is, let me think of the third question because I haven't done it in so long. Third question is, how would you describe abuse? Or what would you call animal abuse? Same thing always. Beating an animal. Or you can psychologically abuse someone as well by dominating over them. Because one of the things I hate in this life is seeing somebody with a companion animal standing shouting at them, and so you can abuse somebody in many different ways, not feeding them and stuff. So I'll be a theme on that. And then my fourth question, I say to them, this is the hard question. This one's going to be tricky to answer, but I'm not judging you with this question. if that's what you think about animals and you're against animal abuse, what about the animals that we take into slaughterhouses, that we hang upside down, we electrocute them, we gas them, and we cut their throats, or we bolt gun them in the head? What about those animals? And then we're away. We're into the conversation. And they'll usually try to justify it in some way. Some people don't. Some people just say, do you know what? I've never thought of that before. So it's very hard to, if you've already told me that kicking a dog is bad, to say that it's okay to throw a pig into a gas chamber and cut their throat for an unnecessary reason. You know, it doesn't make any logical sense. So that's how I do it. Thanks, Tim. I'll do one more, I think, and then what time is it? If you need to go, by the way, you can. You don't have to. I don't want to keep anybody back. What's that?
Hello, hello. Thanks. Hi.
Hi.
Do you ever get like really super burned out? You know, to the point of like you need like a week, 2 weeks, a month off of what you're doing, and if so, in that time, what do you kind of feel you're able to do instead of industry activism?
Okay.
In that time?
Cheers. Actually, I don't. I know many activists that do. I'm very strong. I would call myself soft-hearted, right? With animals especially, I'm very soft-hearted, and what happens to them absolutely destroys me. And when you go to a vigil, or you go to a slaughterhouse, or you go to a farm, like, I don't know, many of you seen it? We, 2 years ago now, went to a farm in Loch Gael, just outside Ballymena, at night time. 50 activists from all over the world went into this farm to expose what was happening there. So this is just outside Ballymena. And the things I saw on that farm would torment you for life. Terrible. Dead bodies everywhere. Animals eating each other. Just Jesus. So yeah, it does affect me badly. But I use that to make myself go out. And I kind of, this might not be a great analogy, but I look at it like if I was alive in Poland or somewhere in the Second World War, and there's prisoners in places like Auschwitz or Bergen-Belsen or wherever, I would like to think that I would do my damnedest to help those people. And so even though it affects me mentally and it affects my heart, I still feel like the right thing to do is to get up in the morning and to do something. So I understand why people get burned out. Of course I do. It's hard to have conversations. It's hard to see these things, especially when you see it in the flesh firsthand or hear the screams firsthand. But I am mentally strong enough, thankfully, that I keep going, and I've always been very steady with my activism. But it's a question maybe you need to ask other people. I know other activists do get burned out and struggle with it greatly, for sure, and I wouldn't criticise them at all, because like these things are harrowing to deal with. So maybe there are other activists who have ways of dealing with stuff. I always think I have like an on-off switch in my head. Like I just go, right, I'm feeling this pain right now, but I'm gonna move on from that because I need to go and do this. So that's my way of dealing with it, and it's probably the worst way in the world of dealing with pain like that. But I kind of bury it, if that makes sense, to get on with what I'm doing. So sorry I can't help you anymore with that one. I think we'll leave it there, where somebody else will be coming on this thing. So thank you very much, folks.
What's the website?
Oh, I'll show you my Instagram. Have you got one on you now?
Well, I've probably just write it down or something. It was here.
See, there's my Instagram there, and then you'll find me YouTube.